Good evening. My name is Edward Sanshin Oberholtzer. I'm the resident priest and guiding teacher here at the Joseph Priestley Zen Sangha in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. We're a part of Empty Moon Zen. Let me begin with case 16 from the Gateless Gate, a case entitled Yun Men, the Sound of the Bell. It's brief. Yun Men said, "See how vast and wide the world is. Why do you put on your 7-piece robe at the sound of the bell?" Next week, we'll present an embarrassment of riches. Ash Wednesday and Valentine's Day, the day commemorating the Buddha's death, and John Frum Day, the day set aside to anticipate the return of John Frum with his vast gifts of cargo, something like the image of the jovial fat guy in the 10th of the ox herding pictures, returning to the marketplace with bliss-bestowing hands. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Who is or who was John Frum? In the 1920s and 30s, he was a figure revered and legendary in Melanesia, in the South Pacific, as someone who would return the islands to their old ways, rejecting Christianity and Western culture. As World War II settled in and disrupted the islands, John Frum came to stand for someone who would intercede with the gods and bring the cargo that had clearly been diverted by American soldiers and sailors, cargo meant for the islanders, food, clothing, tools, gifts from the gods, sent down from the heaven in giant silvery birds. When the Americans left at the end of the war, the islanders tried to summon the bounty of cargo by building replicas of the airstrips, complete with bamboo airplanes, replicas of the means of that the Americans had used to bring that cargo from the sky. And so cargo cults were born. Now, I was ordained by my teacher as a Soto Zen Buddhist priest in a tradition we have inherited from the Japanese. We wear the robes of medieval Japanese monks. We chant liturgy in a style that is loosely modeled on the practice of Japanese temples, sometimes in Sino-Japanese. Our bells, our fish drums, these are all Japanese. And through Japan are echoes of Chinese practices. When I burn incense, it's Japanese incense. When I eat the ritual meals at Seishin, it's with bowls that are modeled on those of Japan. The terms that we use for practice positions in the Zendo, these are in Japanese. My own teacher used to like to say at the end of Seishin, itself a Japanese word, that as a Japanese-based practice, we should honor the tradition with the most Japanese of practices, a group photograph. Is it then any wonder that our form of Zen, our very practice, has been referred to as cargo cult Zen, with the implication that in seeming to parrot the forms, we're seeking to call down the cargo of enlightenment. There is a power dynamic going on with cargo cults, with a powerless culture seeking to wrest control from a more powerful culture, and perhaps if we viewed ourselves as spiritually deprived in relation to Japanese Zen, we can see parallels to cargo cults in our own relation to the East. But it's a stretch, a kind of snide put down, good for a chuckle, but not much more. Buddhism has a long history of moving away from its birthplace in India and then absorbing the belief systems of the new lands it finds itself in and transforming itself in those new milieux. Consider the encounter with Taoism and Confucianism in China, with the Bon religion in Tibet, with Shinto in Japan. The Buddha taught a way, a practice to deal with the suffering of the world, and that practice, or the variants that emerged over time, were perfectly capable of existing side by side, of absorbing the many different systems of belief, and yet remaining Buddhism. Not cultural appropriation, but an embrace, an acknowledgement of our spiritual roots. What then of the West? And how will the Dharma manifest itself here? In my own tradition, the English Zen priest Hon Jiu Kennet, in bringing her own Soto Zen to North America, sought a way to bring the Dharma out, melded with the forms and practices of the Anglican Church, the priestly collars, and the chants, mirroring the forms of the Anglo-Catholic Church. Robert Aiken, the grandfather of American Zen and a direct ancestor of our path, wrote Zen Master Raven, a collection of koans rooted in Native American imagery. John Tarrant's Pacific Zen Institute chants the liturgy set to Cajun melodies. But of course, what is more interesting is how the Dharma will be transformed by Christianity, by Judaism, and by the secular worldview we see here. Already we find fascinating parallels between Guan Yin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and the Virgin Mary, the Christian avatar of mercy and compassion. But what of our clinging to the old ways, to the forms, the rituals, the practices of Japan? And why do we put on that 7-piece robe, our okeses, our roxus, at the sound of the bell? We are creatures embedded in time, in our history. My ancestors, my family, long since dead, live on in who I am, in what I do. My teachers, my very culture, lives on in how I embrace the world. The long and storied history of Buddhism, of Zen, of Soto Zen, lives on through us, however inadequate our presentation of it is. We wear the robes, we offer the incense, we make the bows, and chant the chants, and through us that past comes forth. Each bow here in the present, here in the very un-Asian valleys and hollows of central Pennsylvania, is a bow that reaches back to Sojiji in Kamakura, to Qingde Temple in China, to the Bodhi tree in northeastern India, a bow that holds the past here in this very moment, a bow wrapped in the robes that mirror, however inadequately, however poorly, the robes of our ancestors, of Kazan, of Dogen, of Rujin, yes, and of Siddhartha Gautama, a bow that here and now offers itself going forth into the future, wherever that may lead. No, we're not building bamboo airports and bamboo airplanes hoping to snag the Dharma before it's hijacked by someone else. There is no dharmic cargo to seek. The Dharma is here, all around us. John Frum is you, is me, is that kid down the block. Here's the bell. Put on that robe.